Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Read from verse 15. Yanjannevam sadatmanam yogi niyatamanasah shantim nirvana paramam Matstham sthamadhigacchate natyashnatastu yogosti nachaikantamanashnataha nachatisvapnashilasya jagrato naiva charjuna Yuktahara viharasya Yuktacheshtasya karmasu Yuktasvapnavabodhasya Yogo bhavati dukkhaha. This Lord Krishna prescribes that along with meditation, there should also be a way of life in which one should be savdhan, means should be vigilant. So sometimes they say, what is sadhana or spiritual practice? Savdhani, always being vigilant, alert, is what one should be. Lord Krishna gave a few examples. Yukta ahara viharasya, in ahara the food, vihara the movement. Sometimes these things, people are obsessed with certain things, that is also to be checked here. So being particular about food or being moderate with reference to food, etc. As we mentioned this morning, one should know what kind of food suits oneself, what quantity, etc. But one should not become obsessed with this. There are people who always keep on worrying about food, counting calories, doing this and this and that. Whole day goes in there sometimes, in the food. So they are particular about food, but too particular, and therefore that's all that seems to matter. So we should know that obsession, we want to meditate upon Atma, not upon food. And the idea of being moderate in food is so that you can forget about that. It does not remain an issue. Food is an issue for a person, should not remain an issue. Vihara, exercise also is fine. There should be. In a life of person, exercise must be there to keep the body fit. But people get obsessed with that also. Whole day they keep on doing exercise or sometimes doing yoga asanas, pranayama, whole day. As Swami was saying, this person is every day jogging, he's running 26 miles a day. So that is obsession with certain things. That also one should avoid, should not be obsessed with it. As I say, nothing should remain an issue. We do not want this body to be an issue, that's all. But it will not be an issue only when we keep it in good humor, otherwise it will remain an issue. A child will not be an issue, will not be a botheration only when the child is kept happy. So also body will not be an issue, will not be a botheration if it is kept happy. And so idea is to keep the body in good condition. So that if the body is healthy, mind also is healthy. If body is healthy, mind also is alert. Because health of the body or condition of the body definitely affects the mind. Therefore, here Lord Krishna says in ahara, vihara, in all of that, one should be moderate. Also, one should be alert or vigilant with reference to the mind, activities of the mind, sense organs. At the level of sense organs, the chesta, their activities are performed, there also one should be alert. Being that the hands do what I want them to do, the legs do what I want them to do, the speech talks what I want it to talk, eye sees what I want it to see. We are not saying that we should suppress our feelings or something like that. Basically, we should be comfortable with ourselves and should lead a disciplined life, not a life of deprivation, understand, but disciplined life. Because if there is deprivation, then mind will keep on thinking, I wish I had done this and I wish I had, so that also should not, a sense of deprivation also should not be there. Same time, indulgence also should not be there. There should be moderation. One should not get obsessed with something. One should not get obsessed with doing something, avoiding something. One should take things in the stride so that the day-to-day life also does not remain an issue. Because if you are not careful, then things do become issue. If you are not careful in what we are talking, then talking can become a problem. It can create problem by saying whatever, if you are not careful about what you say, it can create hurt feelings. And then again, it will hurt us in one way or the other. So, that is why very particular in talking. As Lord Krishna says, talking about the austerity of speech in the 17th chapter. Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyam hitam ched. Your vakya or the sentence should be such that it does not cause udvega, does not disturb somebody. Satyam, that what you speak should be truthful. Priyam, you speak truth also in a manner which is pleasant. Hitam, and speak only when it is useful, it serves a purpose. So it's not necessary that we should even speak truth if it does not serve a purpose. If you want to speak truth, make sure that it is spoken in a pleasant manner so that it does not hurt the feelings of others. And this way, that is what we call austerity or discipline or tapasya at every level. And that is very helpful, because ultimately it helps us in also controlling the mind. Because ultimately it is mind that does everything. Even though hands and legs are moving, actually mind is involved in that movement. When it is the speech that is talking, but the mind is involved in the talks also. Mind is involved in saying words also. Mind is involved in every activity. Very often, many activities are going on mechanically. And that being the case, we don't even know things are happening. Things just happen. We just finish the shower without even knowing that. You finish brushing your teeth without knowing it. You finish your walk without knowing it. Then you finish Hanuman Chalisa also without knowing it. So if mechanicalness is going on, mechanicalness is there in our day-to-day activity, same mechanicalness also will be there in meditation, in prayers, in everything. And therefore, if we are alert or vigilant with reference to activities, we shall be able to remain vigilant also during our prayers, during our meditation. Therefore, alertness should be practiced not only at the time of meditation, it should be practiced all the time. So, alertness and meditation will help us being alert in other activities, and alertness in other activities will help us remaining alert during meditation also. So that's what was. So Arjuna, savdhano bhava. Here Arjuna may become savdhana, may become alert, may become vigilant. Be awareful. So live an awareful life. Don't live mechanically. Don't live impulsively also. Meaning that recognize the impulses and do not come into the sphere of impulses. Don't talk out of impulse, don't eat out of impulse, don't do things out of impulse. Do them only out of deliberation. So let your free will always be exercised. May you not become mechanical, may you not become impulsive, may you remain a deliberate person. Let your deliberation in whatever you do or whatever you do not do. Let there be deliberation. That is when the free will is available, and that is really the glory of a human being. When we act mechanically, there is no free will. When we act impulsively, again there is no free will. Only when we act deliberately, that is when the free will is. So we should become deliberate people. Deliberation, everything. That doesn't mean that you must be stressed out or there must be strain in everything. Swamiji is a disciplined person, therefore he is always strained or No, there is no need to be. So deliberation also should, maybe it may in the beginning it may create a certain amount of strain because we have to pay attention to our habits or our impulses. And so it may involve a certain amount of stress in the beginning. In course of time then, one becomes habitually a disciplined person, an alert person, a vigilant person. Therefore, alertness or vigilance in our day-to-day life also is a part of the practice for what we call meditation or yoga. Now, Lord Krishna further elaborates. What has been said briefly is being said a little more elaborately. What is meant by yoga? What is the state of the mind of a yogi? 18th verse tells us that. Yada viniyatam chittam Atmanyeva avatisthate Nispruhas sarva kamebhyah Yukta ityuchyate tada. Yukta iti uchyate tada yukta. Tada, then he is called yukta, then he is called a yogi. Then is called an accomplished person. So, what is the definition of yogi according to Lord Krishna? What is it that the seeker or aspirant is seeking? He wants to become a yogi. Basically, what is meant by yogi is the one who has an abiding self-knowledge. So, yoga in Vedanta, when Lord Krishna uses the word yogi here, it is to be understood as one who has an abiding knowledge of the self. One who is aware of this knowledge of the true nature of oneself. I am Brahman, I am Satchidananda, I am consciousness, Shivoham or Aham Brahmasmi. When that awareness becomes effortless, that is called abiding in one's own knowledge or one's own nature. This is called yoga here. So yoga means abiding knowledge. Tada yukta hiti uchyate. Then this person is called yogi. He is called a person who has accomplished the purpose of life in terms of gaining an abidance in knowledge of one's own self. When is that? Yada viniyatam chittam. So when the chittam, the mind, which is viniyatam, which has been brought under control, although the word is viniyatam, visheshena niyatam, so that which has gained a single pointedness as a result of a long practice. So practice that was stated earlier, when a person practices basically the contemplation upon one's own self. And we see it also that there can be, as a first step, there can be a prayerful meditation, which then leads to the contemplation upon one's own nature. And as a result now, the mind becomes free from the need to think of anything else. It is not that all the time the mind has to be kept restrained. In the beginning, the mind needs a restraint so that the mind gets exposed to one's own self, as the subsequent verses will describe. If you want your child to develop, cultivate taste for a certain thing, if you want your child to cultivate taste for cheese, just as an example, maybe the child doesn't like it. Then what you do? You restrain him from eating other things and make him eat this, Try it, come on, try once, try this. Like they want us to eat Kerala, bitter gourd, Who likes that? But then all right. Try it. It's good for you. It's good for your stomach. I don't care if it's good for stomach or not. I care only if it's good for my palate. But for them, it's not palate. It's the end result that is important. So they want you to do this. Sure, it will involve a restraint in the beginning. Until you start liking it, As you know, Swamiji's story about this Kerala. You know about the story of bitter gourd. Our Pujya Swamiji says that there was a time when he did not like this Kerala, did not like bitter gourd. Once apparently Swamiji was giving a series of talks in Delhi. The first evening he was invited for Bhiksha by a family. And several dishes were cooked. One of them was Kerala. Kerala means bitter gourd. Punjabis do a good job of it. And the food was served on the plate. Swamiji's principle is, deal with the unpleasant first. Deal with the unpleasant first, because what happens is, we keep on postponing unpleasant. Then it becomes a crisis. Someday it becomes a crisis. So rather than that, deal with unpleasant first. So he thought, all right, let me finish Kerala first. So then he can enjoy the rest of the things. And therefore he finished this helping of bitter gourd that was served him. And then the hostess thought that Swami seems to like it, because he finished it first. And so, second one, without asking. That's what they do in India. At least the ways they ask you, would you care for it? Then they would ask you like this, would you care for it? Not even say, in the beginning when I was told like, would you care for it? I was, I don't care for it, But then I realized when they would you care for it means would you want it, But in India they don't ask you sometimes. They just serve you, thinking that you like it. So now another helping. So then Swami said, let me finish that first. Finish that also. Third time. And so you had to swallow it really. He did not enjoy it at all, but anyway somehow he finished. But then the story did not end there. Because when he goes for Bhiksha the next day to another family, they check with the previous family, What does Swami like? And so the next one also checked with this. And he was told that Swami loves Kerala. He loves bitter gourd. So wherever he went, morning and evening, for 10 days. And maybe that was also season of bitter gourd, Kerala. So he got Kerala. Ultimately started liking it. He said, ultimately, you do it again and again, you start liking it. Similarly also, we expose our mind ourselves again and again and again. Mind doesn't like it. Because mind has only the samskara, or the habit of enjoying things other than the self, and therefore it has no interest. It does not cooperate with us also, but then we, with an effort, make the mind exposed to the self. Let the mind gain a taste of the peace which is the nature of the self. Let the mind gain a taste, and let it gain a taste, and let it gain a taste. So in the beginning it doesn't cooperate, and still we make it do. That is when the strain is definitely involved. In course of time, the mind keeps on discovering the joy of being with itself. And still it gets distracted. Like a child which enjoys the food all right and still gets distracted. Mother is feeding the child and child loves that food and still sees the bird and then runs after the bird. So also mind does get distracted. Do it again and again. This also will be told subsequently. As a result, the mind starts to get the taste of its own self, that peace, that abidance. And then a time comes when the mind effortlessly abides in its own self. We say that the mind is never away from the self because just as the ornament is never away from gold, gold being the nature of ornament, so also the self or consciousness is the real content of the mind. Just as the ornament is made of gold, so also mind is made of consciousness. But to the extent that there is an identification of the form, to that extent one misses the content. But as a result of all the time being exposed to one's own content, as the mind gains the exposure and slowly gains that knowledge that this is my true nature, then viniyatam chittam atmaneva avatisthate. As a result of this then long practice, the mind remains abiding in its own self without an effort. So what is accomplished in the beginning with an effort, in course of time becomes accomplished without the effort. So this is a general rule. In the beginning, what requires an effort then becomes effortless in course of time. And this is true of any kind of a practice. Even as learning cycling, in the beginning, a lot of effort was involved in maintaining a balance and falling down and things like that. Then you do it for a length of time, you gain the facility of doing it. You do it effortlessly. And so also, viniyatam chittam, the mind that has been withdrawn from all other activities and it is made to abide in its own self and thus controlled from all activities, then in course of time it gains an abidance in its own self. Atmaneva avatisthate. It abides in its own self with no need to go anywhere because it has discovered a complete contentment with itself. Nispruha sarvakamebhya. What distracts the mind is kama or the desire. There is desire because there is fascination for some object of pleasure. Because the mind gets pleasure out of enjoying or experiencing that object. It is also because the mind is not quite comfortable with its own self. But when it has discovered the total comfort with itself, now there is no need for the mind to seek any gratification or pleasure from anything else because all the gratification it has discovered as its own self. Therefore, nispruha sarvakamebhya, the mind is totally free from longing of all the desirable objects. Kama here is the object of desire. The mind is free from the longing for any object. Because ultimately, as we said earlier also, the happiness is only the nature of the self. Whatever happiness seems to come from anywhere really comes from the self. Having discovered that, the mind has itself become free from all the longing. So the only thing that was distracting the mind was its desire. Desire because there was a fascination for some object of pleasure. When that fascination is no more there, the desire is no more there, and therefore the mind abides in its own self, atmaneva avatisthate, when it abides in its own self effortlessly. Yukta iti uchyate tada, then this person is called a yogi. He is the one who enjoys a mind that abides, effortlessly abides in his own self. This is the goal. Yoga, abidance in one's own self, is what Vedanta is seeking. Understand that this abidance need not be confined to a certain practice. In fact, the abidance remains even when one is not practicing anything. Just now also understand, I abide in myself right now also. Whatever knowledge I have of myself, that I am so and so, I never forget that. You wake me up at night, from the sleep and ask Swami, who are you? I am Swami so and so. Or I am so and so, that I am an ego, that I am an individual being. This is my aparoksha jnana, immediate knowledge right now, and it's abiding knowledge. It's ignorance, of course, but how effortless that is. The idea is that right now also I am abiding in whatever knowledge I have about myself effortlessly. So effortlessly when I abide in the knowledge of my true nature, that I am Brahman. that I am Shivaha, that I am limitless, or I am complete, I am whole, as effortlessly that is, then you don't require any practice anymore. Because it is my own nature. And so, that person was described earlier also. He is called Jivan Mukta, the person who is liberated while living. However, in this particular verse, Lord Krishna describes a particular state of mind wherein the mind effortlessly abides in its own self. And the next verse gives us an upama or an illustration to explain or gives us an example to illustrate the state of the mind of a yogi. The 19th verse tells us, Yatha Deepo Nivatastha Nengate Sopama Smruta Yogino Yata Chittasya Yunjato Yogamatmanaha. Yata Chittasya Yoginaha Atmana Yogam Yunjataha Sa Upama Smruta. The Upama, this is the illustration. Upamiyate Anaya, that with which you compare something is called Upama. So just as you give Upama, you compare the face of a beautiful woman with moon, for example. That becomes an upama. And so also here, the mind of the yogi is compared. To compare to the flame of a lamp, the unflickering flame of a lamp. Yatha deepaha nivatastaha. A deepa or lamp, meaning the flame of the lamp. Nivatastaha, when that lamp is placed where it is free from the disturbance of breeze, the flame does get oxygen. It is not starved of oxygen. At the same time, it is placed maybe in a little aperture where there is no wind or there is no breeze. As a result, there is nothing to disturb the flame. Then you find an unflickering flame. You find that the flame is burning because it does get oxygen, but because there is no breeze, therefore the flame remains steady, unflickering. How the flame of a lamp placed in a windless place does not flicker. This is, Lord Krishna says, that the knowers of yoga, upama smruta, this is the upama or the illustration that is traditionally given by those who are the knowers of yoga, those who are well versed in the various states of mind, and therefore those who know very well the state of mind of a yogi, meaning of a wise person who has this abiding knowledge. They give this illustration of the flame of a lamp, unflickering flame of lamp. So earlier verse told us, what is the breeze that can disturb the mind? The absence of that breeze was stated in the previous verse, Nispruha Sarvakamebhya, when the mind becomes free from the longing of all pleasurable objects. So the longing for any object is like a breeze. And whenever the longing or desire arises in mind, the mind gets disturbed. So what disturbs the mind is a desire, which arises from a fascination that the mind has, fascination or longing that the mind has for some object, where it sees some joy. So that is the breeze, and that's what keeps on distracting the mind. However, the mind of this yogi has become free from all the longing, having discovered the total contentment from oneself. Means that the mind of the yogi has become free from not only desires but from the samskara of the desires also. What they call the vasanas or the samskara, the impressions. They're all gone. And so, during the process of meditation also, various thoughts and desires may arise. In the Mandukya Karika, Gaudapadacharya calls that Kashaya. Kashaya means sometimes undigested thoughts or undigested desires, undigested impressions may be there. Like sometimes at the bottom of a pool of water, there is organic matter which keeps on decaying, and then because of decaying the organic matter, it gives rise to some gas which comes out in the form of bubbles. So in a pool of water which is otherwise quiet, you see some bubbles coming out. What's the reason of the bubble? Because there is something at the bottom. There is some organic matter which is decaying, and therefore it gives rise to this gas, the bubbles. So also the mind may be quiet. Sometimes you find some very strange thoughts coming out of that, for which you find no connection at all. People sometimes say, Swamiji, why, when I am meditating, why do these kind of thoughts arise? And then person gets disturbed also. So my mind is thinking like this, or some unrelated thoughts, or undesirable thoughts. No connection. Then we are advised that do not worry about this kind of thoughts. It is the result of some undigested impressions, undigested desires, things that are left, residual, undigested things left in the mind. And particularly when the mind becomes tranquil, then that is the time when they find it easy to express themselves. Just as the bubbles are emerging from a tranquil pool of water, so also these undigested thoughts may arise in the mind which is tranquil. One should just let the thoughts pass by, not get identified with them, not think that these are my thoughts, or not judge oneself by the thoughts that I am bad because the thoughts are bad or good. Thoughts are thoughts, that is arising in the mind. Remain a witness, let the thoughts pass by. So some of these disturbing factors are all gone in case of a yogi because of a long practice. All the internal disturbing factors are completely resolved. And therefore, now there is nothing, just as there is no breeze to disturb that flame, and so also there is no breeze of desires, or no breeze of any undigested thoughts, and therefore the mind is completely calm. It does not flicker, it remains abiding in the awareness of oneself. So just as an ordinary ignorant person has an awareness that I am the ego, that I am so and so, that I am a limited being, that I am a doer, I am an enjoyer, just as an ignorant person has this kind of an awareness, so also the wise person has this, the mind has awareness that I am Brahman, I am consciousness. That is why the example of a flame is given, because flame means light. So mind actually is a limit mind. So a beautiful example. The flame is that which is light, dispels the darkness, the same time unflickering flame. So also the mind of a yogi is an illumined mind, and therefore all darkness of ignorance is dispelled. At the same time it is an abiding mind, and therefore does not get disturbed by any factors without or within. So that's the upama, the illustration given for the abiding mind of a yogi. This is now further described in several verses subsequently. Says the 28th verse, Yatro paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya yatra chaivatmanatmanam pashyannatmani tushyate. In fact, we should read 4 verses together. Sukhamatyantikam yattata बुद्धिग्राह्यमतीन्द्रियम् वेत्ति यत्र न चैवायम् स्थितश्चलति तत्त्वतः यल्लब्ध्वा चापरं लाभम् मन्यते नाधिकं ततः यस्मिन् स्थितो न दुःखेन गुरुणापि विचाल्यते तं विद्यात् दुःखसंयोग वियोगं योगसंज्ञितम् स निश्चयेन योक्तव्यः योगो निर्विण्णचेतसा. So why do you read all the 4 verses? Because the last verse that we read, verse 23, it says, Tam vidyat dukkha sanyoga viyogam yoga sangitam. Tam vidyat yoga sangitam. Here Arjuna, may you know this to be yoga. So what the state of the mind that is described in the earlier 3 verses, verse 21, 22, 21 and 22, 20, 21 and 22, in these 3 verses, what is described is called yoga. That's all. So from the standpoint of the Anvaya or the prose order, you find that there is no verb in those 3 verses. In the verse 20, 21 and 22, the sentences are incomplete. There is no verb. The verb is provided in the verse 23. That is why we read this verse also. Tam vidyat, know that to be yoga sangitam, what is called yoga. Here Arjuna, know that to be what is called yoga. Meaning that what is described in those 3 verses is yoga. That's all. So let us go back to the verse 28 now. Yatro paramade chittam, yatra uparamade chittam, niruddham yoga sevaya. Yatra yoga sevaya niruddham chittam, uparamate. Yatra cha eva atmana atmanam pashyan atmani tushyati. The 2 characteristics are described here of the mind of a yogi. Yatra, that state in which the state which is called yoga, which is called absorption, which is called absorption in one's own self. Here, the difference between what the Yoga Shastra teaches and what Vedanta teaches, that difference, technical difference also should be known. Yoga Shastra basically teaches what they call the Nirvikalpa Samadhi or a Samprajñāta Samadhi. A Samadhi or a state of mind, Samadhi is absorption, a state of mind where there is complete absorption. What is called Savikalpa Samadhi and Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Savikalpa means the absorption with Vikalpa, and Nirvikalpa means an absorption without Vikalpa. What is Vikalpa? Vikalpa is the duality that we encounter in every experience. In every experience there is the experiencer, the object of experience and experiencing. This triad or triputi is always involved. Right now, for example, you are the listeners. So listener, the words which are listened to and the act of listening. These 3 things are involved. The listening can take place when there is a listener, there is something to listen to, and there is the act of listening. The words are spoken. If you are not there, you cannot listen. You are not there, you can be sitting there and still not there. Suppose the mind is elsewhere, then also listening will not take place. So listener must be there. The listener is there if no words are spoken. The object of listening is not there, then also listening cannot take place. the listener also is there. The listened words are also there. But suppose there is some problem with the faculty of listening, then also listening cannot take place. So listener, what is listened to, and the act of listening. Also the knower, known and knowing. The seer, seen, seeing. So you are the seer, I am the seen, there is the act of seeing. I am the speaker, the words are spoken, act of speaking. These three factors are involved in every experience. This is called vikalpa. Vikalpa means this duality or the triad of the knower, known and knowing. That is called vikalpa because it is vividam kalpana. Actually, if you analyze the nature of knower, known and knowing, what is truly the nature of the one who calls himself a knower? What is the essence of this knower? Just as you ask this question, this person who is acting as a beggar, what is his true nature? In the beggar who is acting on the stage, there is something which is real and something which is not real. Something which is inherent, something which is incidental. The actor is inherent, the beggar is incidental because the same actor can put on some other costume and may act as a king. In that case, again, that costume or the role is subject to change, whereas the actor does not change. We can say that the actor is the inherent, the abiding factor, whereas the role or the costumes are incidental. They are subject to coming and going. Thus, when we see this actor on the stage, in that, the beggar on the stage, there are two aspects involved. One is an aspect that does not change, other is an aspect that changes. So what is changing cannot be said of a nature, what does not change is nature. So we can say that really the actor is the true nature of this beggar. Similarly, you take an example of an ornament. There also, the ornament is a bangle right now. You can melt that gold and you can form it in some other form and you can make a chain. So now the name and form has changed. You can again melt that gold and make an anklet out of that. The name and form has changed. So thus the names and forms are subject to change, but the gold is that which does not change. We can say that the gold is the inherent or the abiding or the changeless aspect of the ornament, whereas the name and form are changing incidental aspect. The name and form depends upon the gold does not depend upon name and form. Meaning, a bangle depends upon the gold for it to be, but the gold doesn't have to be a bangle for it to be. Therefore, that which is independent is called truth, that which is dependent is not truth. So, thus, now we can look at our own self. When I say I am a speaker, I am a hearer, I am a thinker, I am a knower, I am a seer, this is how I find myself. Right now I am a speaker. In between I become a thinker. Sometimes I become a listener. So in I also there is a changing part. As in case of an actor, now is a beggar, then is a king, and so also now I am what? I am a speaker. Then I am a listener. Then I am an eater. Then I am a thinker, or whatever. So, these changing aspects cannot be my nature because they are coming and going. So in all of these changing aspects, what is it that is changeless substratum? Just as the gold is a changeless substratum for various names and forms, just as an actor is a changeless substratum for various costumes or roles, so also what is the changeless substratum about I, on which all these various functions or roles keep on coming and going. So when we ask this question, right now I am a speaker, then I am a hearer, then I am a thinker. In all of this, what is that does not change? Answer is, I am I am does not change. That I am, how do you know that you are? Because that I am is in fact self-revealing, and therefore I know that I am without any effort, because I am is self-revealing, self-effulgent. That I am conscious is a fact about me which does not change regardless of whether I am happy, unhappy, I am awake, I am sleeping, whatever. That I am and that I am conscious, that Sat and Chit I am, that never changes. So therefore, what is the true nature of the I? We will find that Sat and Chit, existence and awareness really, is the true nature of the I. And what's the form that Sat Chit? It is no form. All the forms keep on coming and going. They are incidental. All the forms, such as the speaker, hearer, are incidental. All of them are ultimately sustained by I, the self, which is existing, which is self-shining, which is formless, is the substratum, all the forms. So when we thus inquire, what's the true nature of I? It turns out to be nothing but consciousness, nothing but existence, nothing but formlessness. Then we ask the question, what is the true nature of this object, such as flower? So I am the knower, the nature of knower is consciousness or existence. So what's the nature of this flower? When you ask what is about the flower that also does not change, we find that in flower also there is something subject to change. This flower tomorrow will not have the same freshness that it has right now. After a week, it will not have the same color that it has now. After a month, it may not have the same form that it has now. And then also, when this color, when the form, all of these about the flower are changing, what is that does not change? That the flower is, does not change. That the flower shines in my awareness, does not change. Therefore, Sat and Chit, that also turns out to be the inherent nature of this flower. Understand this. So really, knower also is Satchit, and where Satchidananda also is there, so the knower is Satchidananda Asti Bhadi Priyam. The known also is Asti Bhadi Priyam Satchidananda. And what is knowing? Knowing is the flower thought that takes place in my mind. So when I come in contact with the flower, there is a thought of flower. That's what we call knowledge. So this flower thought, there also in the thought also, the name and form keep on changing, because now it is flower thought, then the book thought, then the part thought. And there also, when we remove the changing aspects, the thought also turns out to be nothing but just consciousness and existence. So really speaking, one Satchidananda, or one Asti Bhadi Priyam, or one truth, or one self alone, understand, assumes the role of the knower, that alone becomes a known, that alone becomes a knowledge. One thing really takes all these different forms. Although we think that the knower, known and knowledge are all distinct from each other, so it looks like as long as we do not inquire into their true nature, but when we probe into what the true nature is, we discover that the knower, known and knowledge, all of them ultimately spring from only one substratum, which is Asti Bhati Priyam or Sat Chit Ananda. Just as from the water there is this wave, then there is bubble, then there is foam. Looks like wave is different, bubble is different, foam is different. When you inquire into what's the essence of the wave, it's water. What is bubble? There also is water. What is foam? There also is water. One water manifesting as the waves, the bubbles, the foam, or one gold manifesting as number of ornaments. So also one self or consciousness manifesting as the knower, known and knowledge. So this kalpana, this projection upon the self. One self was Satchidananda, this projection of the knower, known and knowledge. This projection is all kalpana. Vikalpa. Vikalpa means vividha kalpana, the various kinds of superimposition. Savikalpa, that is along with kalpana. So, one consciousness is imagined to be the knower, the known and knowledge. Therefore, an experience where this difference is there of knower, known and knowledge is called savikalpa, along with vikalpa, along with the duality, along with these projections. Therefore, in Yoga Shastra they talk of the samadhi absorption also in two stages. They call savikalpa samadhi and nirvikalpa samadhi. Samadhi means a state of absorption where there is a slight awareness of the knower, known and knowledge. There is knowledge that I am Brahman, but there also still there is an awareness of I as well as Brahman. And in course of time, when that vikalpa also drops, and all that remains is nothing but the self or consciousness, which is the substratum of all, that would be called nirvikalpa samadhi. So, savikalpa and nirvikalpa. So here, Lord Krishna describes, so as a result of a long practice, the vikalpa also slowly and slowly resolve, and everything resolves into just the truth, which is myself, which is consciousness, which is the substratum of the knower, known and the knowledge. That's all that remains, an awareness of that. That will be called this nirvikalpa samadhi, or called the abiding knowledge of the self, which is what Lord Krishna is describing in these three verses. So Lord Krishna says, Yatra yoga sevaya niruddham chittam. Yoga sevaya, by the practice of yoga, by the practice of concentration, by the practice that earlier described of all the time trying to make my mind see the true nature of myself. It is not so much concentrating the mind upon the self really, because in case of the self, I cannot concentrate the mind on the self, because self is the mind. When I have to think of something other than myself, then the question of concentration comes. But here, it's a matter of seeing, when I constantly make my mind see this fact that, hey, you are consciousness, you are Brahman, you are the Asti Bhadi Prem, you are Satchidananda. Yoga Sevaya, when this is done for a length of time, then Niruddhan Chittam Uparamade, the mind gets withdrawn from every other kind of thought or projection and simply abides in the knowledge that I am consciousness, or I am self, or I am Brahman. Yatra cha eva atmana atmanam pashyan. There one sees oneself by oneself. Not that there is a difference between the seer and seen. When there is a duality of seer and seen, you still call it the savikalpa samadhi. When that difference also resolves, then I see myself. Even when the difference is there, then also I see myself as of the nature of happiness, ananda. Yatra cheva evam atmana atmanam pashyan. Seeing myself by myself, meaning that being aware of myself. Atmani tushyati, I find a total contentment or satisfaction with myself. Lord Krishna says that what is awareness is nothing but ananda also. What is awareness is also fullness. And therefore, discovering myself as awareness also is discovering myself as ananda or fullness. And therefore, this yogi, as a result of this long practice, who has discovered thus the true nature of oneself, sees himself as nothing but ananda, and therefore finds a total satisfaction or contentment with his own self. So in the next verses, Lord Krishna describes the same thing. We read the verse 21 also. Sukham atyantikam yattat buddhigrahyam atindiram vetti. So what is said in the second line is expanded here, that this yogi, or the wise person, or the enlightened person I should say, finds the total contentment with himself. Meaning that he sees himself as of the nature of atyantikam sukham. Sukham, or the happiness which has no anta, which has no limit. Meaning that he sees himself as the limitless happiness. Buddhigrahyam, that which is in fact seen or known by buddhi in his own mind, meaning he is aware that I am happiness. Atindriyam, the happiness that is not generated as a result of an experience. So usually we gain experiences of pleasurable objects through our sense organs. The happiness of self, Lord Krishna says, Atindriyam is not a result of an experience of sense organs. It is something that is spontaneous, it is self-revealing, it is nature of myself, and therefore the enlightened person sees himself as the limitless happiness, which is not a result of an experience, which is not limited by the experience of a limited object, which is uncreated, which is one's own self, which is self-effulgent. And this is what he vetti, this is what he sees himself as. Yatra chayavayam sthitaha tatvatah chalati, and abiding in which one does not get deviated from one's own nature. So in these verses, Lord Krishna says that the self is of the nature of ananda, self is of the nature of boundless happiness. Happiness which is inherent nature of the self, happiness that is not created, which is always there, but then which was missed on account of the mind always looking for happiness elsewhere. When the mind now has gained an abundance in itself, then it sees itself as nothing but happiness, and remaining where he does not get disturbed from his true nature. We'll continue the discussion in the afternoon. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo